Good afternoon or morning whenever I get this posted, everyone. Today is 3/8/23, so March the 8th, 2023, and this is this week's Star Report from Wednesday to Wednesday, and I am Jason. I'm here at New Dimensions Crystals and Reiki in downtown Brenham, Texas. Come by the shop and see me if you're in Texas, or go to our website, newdimensionscrystals.com, and check out all the services I have. Maybe book you something or see what else goes on at the shop. Let's get right into it. Today, let's talk about the solar weather first. Solar weather has been intense. It continues to be intense. The solar uptick or the peaking of the sun should be peaking most of this month into next month, and then it might go down a little bit, but it's just in a wave of intensity because the sun is changing and the earth is changing and the solar system is changing. So what happened was over the last couple of days. Actually, let's start with this morning. This morning, if you're feeling a little wonky or off, there was an M-class solar flare this morning that sort of erupted, and so that would have caused a peak in brain fog. And then there was no coronal mass ejection or CME, so there was no plasma that left the sun towards Earth. So we don't have to worry about any impactors from that. But the solar wind was up over the weekend because beginning Sunday, the coronal hole started to hit the Earth. And what that does is that upticks on the body, right? So you would have felt heavy, you would have felt fatigued, and the energy would have caused you to definitely sort of be off, and maybe even your sleep patterns would have been disrupted. And so that peaking over the weekend and probably into Monday, Tuesday would have also activated or gone along with the full moon, right? So the moon and the sun were busting you up. The full moon in Pisces was definitely more intense. I could feel it at the house. My 4-year-old was definitely turned all the way up and experiencing the sun and the moon, and the energy of the day was such that starting projects was hard. So that might have been something that was going on with you. Those things are just going to trigger relationship issues, right? So if there's anything that you've been holding back, that sort of kicks it all to the surface. It's kind of like walking through a dusty room, right? The room looks fine until all of a sudden you walk through it, and then all of a sudden you see dust in the air and the sun comes through the window and you're like, oh my gosh, this room is really dirty. That would have been sort of, if you have any issues, any kind of going on, those would have been kicked up. And so that actual energy is sort of dying down as the moon peaked yesterday and today in the full moon. But that energy also did a couple other things. There's starting to be correlations, if not causations, of the intensity of Earth weather or geo weather with the sun doing stuff like that. And the most important sort of thing of that nature that we could sort of look at is the typhoon that's been hitting Madagascar now and has intensified, I believe they say 4 times, which each time there was a solar event which caused the uptick in wind speed. And it's also the longest lasting typhoon, right? And so we noticed we've been observing in the solar system that some of the external planetary systems, their storms have come early and been bigger. And so those kinds of things are happening because of the sun, not because of warming. Right now, we are currently in a 1 to 2 degree warming period over a century or so. But usually when these things sort of happen, you can have as much as 16 degrees change in a decade. And so we are not near the intensity that it could be, and it is not caused necessarily by human interaction, but is caused by the sun. And so that correlation is something to sort of pay attention to. So that made the storm last longer, it made it last bigger, and it made it go up and down in strength. So pay attention to the solar weather for stuff like that. And then also the cosmic weather. If you have access to, usually solar weather channels will tell you about the cosmos or the solar system, what's happening on the other planets, to sort of show that it is not an earthbound problem, but a solar system wide problem. And therefore linking it even further or more strongly to sun weather or solar weather. So let's jump into the cosmic weather, the astrology of it all, and sort of see how that's going. Is that helping? we just talked about the full moon in Pisces, right? And so the revelation of the ground of your being, right? So we talked about last week I believe we did, in the arriving of Pisces and the Pisces stellium, that Pisces, alchemically, not astrologically, chemically relates to the feet, right? And so the ground of our being is sort of being revealed, right? What is sort of keeping us here with that full moon in Pisces. Pisces is also having to do with fish and water. And so we have these two water signs that are dominant now, right? So we're in Aquarius, and we have large planetary systems, and the moon in Pisces, which was the former air, right? So we from Pisces into Aquarius. And so that idea of being grounded or being able to walk on water is the energy of the day, right? And so the water has become more Aquarian water, meaning that the spiritual nature, the cosmic nature of water has sort of risen. And so that idea that what the moon was doing yesterday was really kind of a revelation of what are you going to stand for? What are you going to stand in? Who are you going to stand with? And so that solar energy that I talked about with the conflict going on with family and stuff with my 4-year-old daughter, right? That intensity would have been sort of pronounced. And then the Pisces stellium, which is just four heavenly bodies that are in one sign. The Pisces stellium starts today and lasts until March the 20th, right? So the 8th to the 20th. And those things that are in there is the Sun, Saturn, Mercury, and Neptune, right? And so Neptune is this great spiritual understanding. It's also a water planet, right? Sometimes Neptune is associated with Atlantis and the hidden secrets or the old secrets of a better humanity or a more humanity that had what we would sort of say metaphysical skills or metaphysical understandings, that there was an inherent human wisdom that was embodied more because of the alignment of the planets. And so those sort of things are sort of moving into a new reality, right? So I wouldn't necessarily call it a return of an Atlantis, but definitely that energy with that Neptune's coming. So like I said, Pisces was the last age, and so that's how we sort of have a lot of our symbolism of the last age, especially in the Western world, the Western Roman world, especially the Holy Roman Empire world, right? Sometimes Jesus was referred to as the Fisher King, and then we have the symbolism of the fishing with the Pope and the hats that the Pope wore, and then just symbolism of the Ichthus, or the Jesus Christ, Son of God, with a little fish that they used to draw on the sand, right? So that whole idea of symbolism of being grounded in the water is sort of intensified today because we're having the Pisces stellium until the 20th. And then that energy of sort of walking on water, right? That we can rise above being swimming in the water of external influence, but we can rise above the water and walk on it and sort of embody our own power. So that's some of the energy that's sort of coming, right? So pay attention to that. Oh yeah, and so yeah, this is also easier to do. You're more buoyant because there are no retrogrades, right? So one would say that it's easier to walk on water when there's nothing weighing you down, right? So we are currently still retrograde free till 4/20, so that's April 20th, maybe the 21st. And so that energy is happening today. Yeah, it's a big day. With the edge of the full moon, right? So the full moon peaked yesterday, but technically today is probably still a little bit of that full moon energy. And then the sun's flaring. So you've got a triple threat going on, the cosmos, the sun, the moon, all that's going on. And then Thursday, Neptune really starts to come forward into prominence, into the affect. So like today, I would sort of focus on Mercury and what that does for you. Not Mercury, Neptune. Yeah, I would focus on Neptune and what that does for you. Why did I say Mercury? Because it's one of the other planets. So today Today, pay attention to the stellium overall. Tomorrow, pay attention to the Neptune part of it. That's going to give you an understanding or a increased focus on your inner knowing, right? So Neptune is about what is the power of your own spirit. And the reason tomorrow that it is becoming prominent is it is preparing to go retrograde, right? So the bigger the planet and the farther away, the further the prequel is to the energy starting to affect us before it goes retrograde, because it doesn't go retrograde, I believe, until July. And so Neptune is going to really cause you to understand and believe that you have the inner power, right? And just sort of the anecdote that brings that to a highlight. As you know, we do breathwork here at the shop every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. till 11:30. But I also do breathwork on my own with the Elemental Rhythm breathwork people that certify me. And one of the visions that I had was this old time when I was in Sunday school. I think I was like, I don't know, maybe me first grade, but they were teaching us the Lord's Prayer. And my dad had given me kid language to say the whole thing, right? And so anybody who's been in a mainline church would know that they sort of have the these and the thous ones, and then they have the, I would say modern, but not really modern anymore, modern English translation. My dad had just sort of put those together and gave me all the easy words for a child to say. And I was in class and they're like, hey, who can say the Lord's Prayer? I was like, I got this, because I said it every night. And so I said it, and I said it with the combined version, and that wasn't correct according to my Sunday school teacher at the time, right? And I'm like, what? And so a reason I bring that up is because there was a couple of things where I questioned. I was like, who is this lady? And that she doesn't know that I'm right. Second of all, I was like, hey, my dad can't possibly be wrong. Anybody who's local to Brenham knows my dad was a nice guy and probably wasn't wrong that often, but he also didn't speak that much out loud. And so that whole idea where I should have trusted myself, I just sort of just said, all right, lady. As a person in first grade, I was like, all right, lady, whatever you say. And then just sort of held my tongue until I got home and told my dad that people don't understand how smart I am. But the reason I had that thing in this whole Neptune thing is trusting my inner knowing, right? And so this energy is to trust your inner knowing. There might not be a reason for you to know what you know. There might not be any kind of that you can put in a scientific way that can back up what you're saying, but you just feel it, that it is true, definitely for you. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be open for, correction that's going to save your life or keep you out of some deep trouble, but you should trust your inner knowing first. And that's the energy that's happening on Thursday, right? So we had full moon, solar weather, Pisces, stellium, Thursday, trust your inner knowing. It's an intense week. Friday gets easy. Friday is the 10th. And so the numerology of the day is an 11 master day. And we know that 11 master days sort of give us the vibration, which is mastery, meaning that we can master probably this stellium and this Neptune energy, which is our inner knowing, right? So we can master our inner knowing. It is the last master day until October 11th, right? And so the 11 master day energy comes periodically, but sometimes there's gaps in it. And so Friday would be a really good day to sort of decide what part of your inner knowing you're going to rely on and sort of grab control while there's still no retrogrades so that you can act upon that. So I don't want to say Friday's go day, but if you haven't gone by Friday or decided or started to trust yourself by Friday, Friday's a good day to start. Saturday, Saturn comes into prominence. And so Saturn is moving into Pisces as well, right? It's moving into the stellium, but Saturn is the idea of rules, of structure, of newness, right? Building new things, building new ways of life, and calling you into account, right? So it's also, Saturn is a mover in that it makes you motivated, but it's also a mover in that it keeps you accountable. And so Saturn in Pisces, right, is really about the idea of the purification of water and also water purifying us, right? So increased water intake would be good if you're not already drinking your peak water. But the idea that this Saturn in Pisces is purified and purifying water is also the age of accountability, right? So Saturn is going to be in Pisces for a while. And so that Saturn is really going to cause a couple of things to be revealed, right? So also think of accountability as revelation of things that aren't right. And if you sort of see the energy that's moving up to the stellium and this Saturn in Pisces is really sort of this understanding of, if you're paying attention to popular culture, that the things that we thought or were told were true about what governed us from 2020 to 2023, whether that be cosmologically, whether that be medically, weren't exactly as it were, right? And so accountability is coming, right? And so accountability is not necessarily punishment, right? So accountability is just a revelation and an acknowledgement of information that may or may not have been evident or true is now becoming evident and true. And so pay attention to that. That's an energy that a lot of people are been looking for, right? That they've had suspicions, right? Right. So if you imagine that you've had this inner suspicion that things might not be as they seem, and then all of a sudden we get into this stellium with Neptune telling you to trust your inner guidance. Now your inner guidance is going to sort of reveal yourself to be true, kind of like me in that Sunday school moment where I was revealed to be correct, just not in the way that the teacher of my Sunday school class thought I should be. Right. And so there is a sense where both sides can be correct. It's just trusting your inner knowledge that the way that you are correct is correct for you and doesn't necessarily have to dominate what's correct for somebody else. And so that was just a really good lesson that sort of came up through breath work, which we do here in the shop on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. to 11:30. Go to newdimensionscrystals.com and scroll down, watch the little video about how it goes here, and then sign up. There's a little button to click that you can purchase. I just need those tickets purchased so that I can prepare for how many people are going to be here on a Sunday. And, you know, it's always easier when I'm prepared, and then when I'm prepared for who actually shows up, and then people show up, and then it becomes a more full event, right? So these events can be revelatory. These events can be cathartic. These events could just even be physically relaxing. Because it is breath work, you are doing an exercise with the lungs, but that exercise with the lungs causes a psychic and spiritual development or openings that sometimes people don't get to on their own through either meditation or diet otherwise. So that, I think, is the weather for the week that I have on my notes. I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you for the subscriptions. Last little note, you might have seen me, or if you haven't seen me yet, go to BGcast. They're sometimes in the comments. Shared it on our social media. That podcast that I did with those guys is up, and I talked a little bit, probably a little bit down in the weeds, but I talked a little bit about conspiracy, origin story, how did I get here, why am I doing what I do, and those guys are just really awesome. They have some great podcasts. They seem well read and well watched and well researched. Like, it's great when you get around people that, hey, you remember this? Oh yeah. It's kind of like meeting up with people from high school and telling the old stories, right? It's like, hey, do you remember when this story came out, or when you believe this about the world? They're like, yeah, I remember that, but what about this? And so it was a really good, I think it was about an hour and a half. We talked a while. We were scheduled for an hour, and we just, so yeah, BGcast guys are really great. And that'd be Steven and Joe over there. And I need to catch up on some of their videos they told me to watch in the podcast about their origin story, because they have a lot more discussion-oriented videos up in there. So look for that. I believe that's all, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, many blessings.